Before Super Nintendo World at Universal Studios, Nintendo had another amusement park, Nintendoland, but this one has long since closed down. Unlike today's Nintendo attractions, this one wasn't built on massive acres of land, but existed entirely within the Wii U, exclusive to all 7 of its owners.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, actually it was more like 13 million, but you get my point. Back in November 2012, this park opened its gates to celebrate the launch of Nintendo's newest technology, and guests would be welcomed into this grand plaza by Monita.
I am Monita, your park guide.
A robotic monitor companion guiding them through attractions designed to showcase the Wii U's unique capabilities, and that groundbreaking gamepad. This magical land's attraction served as a tribute to Nintendo's popular franchises like Mario, Legend of Zelda, Metroid, and even the Game & Watch. But as the years passed and the Wii U faded into obscurity, so did Nintendoland. Its gates locked, its attractions forgotten. So today I decided to return to it, not just to relive the memories, but to uncover how it was developed in the first place, and how it holds up in present day. My ticket? A dusty Wii U console hidden in the depths of my closet. So step 1, dig up the console. Brush off these cobwebs and pray that it still works. This also meant scouring my closet for every last cable and the forgotten charger for the gamepad. But once everything was set up, I powered it on. But then disaster struck. Nintendoland wasn't installed. With the Wii U eShop closed earlier this year, the park seemed out of reach to me forever. For a moment, my heart sank. But as if by some miracle, I discovered I could still access my purchase history. My golden ticket was back in hand. With all the pleasantries out of the way, my path back into Nintendoland was finally secured, and I stepped once again through the curtain into Nintendo's very first amusement park. When I arrived, I found myself standing at the very top of the park's central tower, the iconic heart of Nintendoland. And from this vantage point, the plaza stretched out before me, filled with attractions, interactive elements, and Miis wandering around, giving this illusion of life. But something felt off. Back in its prime, Nintendoland wasn't just about the attractions, it was about the people. And thanks to the Wii U social network, Miiverse, the park once felt alive, buzzing with messages, drawings, and interactions from real players around the world. Miiverse let players leave their mark, turning the park into a shared space full of creativity and connection. But now with Miiverse gone, that magic is lost. The Miis in the plaza were no longer vibrant reflections of real players. No, they were generic, soulless avatars. Hitting the message button confirmed it. No connection, no life. This realization made these vibrant sounds at the plaza unsettling, and I couldn't shake the feeling that these empty-eyed Miis were watching me, the last real person in this forgotten park. And if anyone turns this into a creepypasta, you know who to credit. But enough fooling around, I have 12 attractions I need to get to in one day. So let's start with the single rider experiences. First stop, The Legend of Zelda Battle Quest. As the name suggests, this attraction is based on the Zelda franchise and is probably one of the more robust experiences at the park. You step into the shoes of Link in this on-rails shooter quest to defeat Ganon, or Nintendoland Ganon. And you have the option to wield either a bow or sword as you journey through this cloth-stitched version of Hyrule. Opting for the bow, I relied on the Wii U gamepad's gyroscope to aim at enemies out for my blood. And with familiar remixed Zelda tracks blaring in the background, I ventured through the first stages, taking down enemies with carefully timed shots. As a Splatoon veteran, I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Wii U's gyroscope for aiming, but this attraction doesn't f around. There are 14 stages of highly aggressive enemies, and being unable to control my movement led to situations where I was completely overwhelmed. Like this one, where I got absolutely folded by moblins. And that's when it became obvious to me that this attraction was designed with multiplayer in mind. Sword-wielding friends fending off enemies while you provide range support, which means up to 5 players can take on this challenge. So while I'm playing solo, I decided to try the sword instead, which meant heading back into my closet once again to dig out a Wii remote, and a nunchuck, just in case. This was closet trip number 2. Alright, so now that I have all the equipment, I was ready to become Link, and well, shit. So I need a Wii Remote Plus accessory or a Wii Remote Plus controller, and at this point in time, I had neither. But this is the TheMentok channel, we go all the way around here. So one next day delivery later, I had my Master Sword in hand and started the quest all over again. And immediately I felt more at home, even though it's been years since I last waggled a Wii remote, but now I could get into these moblins' faces. The swordplay is heavily inspired by Skyward Sword, which leaned heavily on the Wii Motion Plus tech for more precise swordplay. And the enemies here will guard themselves in ways that require you to actually plan out the direction of your swings, rather than thoughtless waggling. I even had access to the iconic Skyward Strike by pointing my sword upward to charge a more lethal swing. Press B and you'll raise your shield to block incoming attacks. But despite the upgraded arsenal, the difficulty was just as brutal when playing alone. I pushed forward, but eventually this moblin absolutely clubbed the soul out of me. And with any good theme park, some attractions are more about the journey than the destination. AKA I gave up.
Damn!
But this wasn't the end for me. Zelda Battle Quest had one more trick up its sleeve, the time attack mode. And after licking my wounds from the main quest, I decided to give this mode a shot. Time attack puts you in the race against the clock, testing your speed and precision as you blitz through the attraction stages, and is less about survival and more about efficiency, though that's easier said than done when enemies are still just as aggressive. With the bow, I felt the pressure to line up shots quickly, leading to plenty of panicked misses, and this mode felt like the ultimate test of everything I had learned so far. But after a valiant effort in Zelda Battle Quest, I decided to move on before the park staff kicked me out, aka I had enough. But next up was Yoshi's Fruit Cart. A much cuter little attraction that seems chill and peaceful at first, but led to some of my most rage-induced moments at Nintendoland. The rules are deceptively simple. There's fruit scattered on the map that the Yoshi cart needs to collect. And all you have to do is use the stylus to draw a line on the gamepad, connecting Yoshi to all the fruit and the exit door to proceed to the next level. Miss any of these fruit and the door won't open, and you will end up losing a life. But the catch? These fruit are invisible on the gamepad screen. You'll have to look up at the TV as a reference and accurately translate that path onto the gamepad. So while it starts off with a pretty manageable set of challenges, some of these levels demand an almost surgical level of precision, and it feels like guessing at best. There are 50 stages in total, and things quickly spiral into madness. Fruit that must be collected in a specific order, and swarms of bees impeding your path to those fruit. Meanwhile, you have spikes and moving fruit mocking you as you try to keep your lines accurate. Not to mention these holes in the ground that will destroy your Yoshi cart. I mean, just look at this chaos. To make matters worse, the attraction gives you only 3 lives. So if you fail 3 times, you're booted back to the very beginning. And I cannot tell you how many times I drew what I thought was the perfect path, only for Yoshi to veer off slightly and miss that last piece of fruit. It doesn't help that the high score from my past self is sitting here taunting me, by the way. Despite all the frustration though, I have to admit Yoshi's Fruit Cart might be my second favorite single player attraction at the park. There's something addictive about it, even when it feels like the game is mocking you. But after getting thoroughly humbled by invisible fruit, I needed a change of pace. Something where I can let loose and just have a little fun. So the next stop on our tour, Octopus Dance. An attraction loosely based on the Game & Watch Octopus game. Or maybe you recognize this as Mr. Game & Watch's Final Smash in Smash Bros. Either way, this attraction is a bit of a creative leap from the original Game & Watch Octopus game, where the diver dodged the octopus to collect treasure. Here, it's less about survival and more about dancing.
What?
As I stepped onto the stage, I was greeted by the diver from the original Octopus game, with the titular octopus spectating in the background. So at first I was feeling pretty confident. The moves were straightforward and I was nailing the rhythm, but it didn't take long for things to escalate. Suddenly I'm here tilting the gamepad to match gyroscope movements while trying to stay in time with the music. Just when I thought I was recovering though, the dancer decides to switch things up. He flips you around, so you have to follow the moves from an entirely new perspective, which forces you to look between the gamepad and the TV between each round. And if that wasn't distracting enough, there was a submarine orbiting the stage, showing my gorgeous mug floating in the background on the gamepad's camera feed. Mies joined the crowd, flailing and cheering, or judging, I'm not sure which. The octopus mostly stood there, just watching me flail around. I swear I saw it shaking its head in disappointment once or twice. But to have some fun with me, he sends a minion to squirt ink all over my screen, leaving me flailing blindly while hoping I would hit the right moves. There's so much going on here, and every time I missed a move, the hearts ticked down, adding to the pressure of the situation. And once they're all gone, it's back to the start, and I'll be honest, I made that trip more than once. But once again, it's pretty fun. The music is infectious, and it starts off as a chiptune style beat, and more instruments start to layer on top of it before getting to a more chill section of the song to match the diver's more fluid movements. It's a vibe. It's goofy, challenging, and hilariously unpredictable. But even better, it's a blast with friends, watching everyone struggle to keep up and seeing their reactions when those unpredictable things happen. It's priceless. So after all this chaos of trying to gather invisible fruit and match insane dance moves, I figured it was time for a quick rest, and a good amusement park needs good scenery. and Nintendo Land delivers with prizes that help flesh out this plaza. These interactive items are all inspired by the attractions within the park, and when touched, they display brief descriptions. It's not much, but it adds a fun incentive to dive deeper into the attractions. The currency here is coins, earned by playing more attractions. Once you've collected a good amount, you can head back to the central tower to play this prize game. It's basically pachinko. Drop your coins in and aim for the target buckets. But if you hit all these targets, you'll win a new prize that you can unbox in the plaza, and each one adds a bit more character to the space. The best prize though is the jukebox, packed with unlockable music tracks from the attractions, and so you can just walk right over to it and select which one you like once you've unlocked enough. And it's pretty cool to stand in the plaza and just hear these nostalgic tunes echoing throughout the park, which adds a new layer of personality to the space. It's a really small touch, but it makes the plaza feel a little bit more alive, even in this abandoned state. So surrounded by all these little reminders of Nintendo's creativity, I couldn't help but think about the park as a whole. Nintendo Land may feel like a forgotten relic now, but back in 2012, it represented something much bigger. Nintendo's grand vision for the Wii U. And like any theme park, its story starts with how it was built. We have to head back to E3 2011 for this one. At the time, Nintendo was riding high on the massive success of the Wii, but the buzz was starting to fade. The hardware was outdated, and the casual market, the one that made grandma want a Wii, was moving on. Gamers were ready for the next step, and Nintendo needed to deliver. Former Nintendo of America president Reggie Fils-Aimé would take the stage at E3 2011 and unveil the next generation of Wii.
Of Wii U.
Yeah, the focus here was all on the gamepad, and people left this conference confused at whether this was a brand new console or just a peripheral for the Nintendo Wii.
Oh shit, that's dope. But can I play this on the toilet?
And at the following E3, Nintendo would start to unveil more details about this new console, and though they usually like to end their conferences on a high note with a big title like Mario or Zelda, or rather, this is what people always want them to do, they instead unveiled Nintendo Land, and the conference would conclude with moderate applause and an awkward demonstration of the fireworks item in the plaza. Hardly the grand finale fans were expecting. And fun fact, this was Nintendo's last live E3 presentation before they switched to Nintendo Directs. Despite this lukewarm reception, Nintendo Land was in the works for a couple of years up to this point, and titles like this weren't new for Nintendo. For the Wii, they'd struck gold with Wii Sports, a game so universally appealing it made even grandma want a bowl. And the Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development team aimed to replicate that success with the Wii U. Directors Takayuki Shimomura and Yoshikazu Yamashita worked on Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort returned for this project, and they were messing around with different prototypes while the Wii U was being finalized. And one of these prototypes involved an experiment of gameplay using both a small screen in the player's hands and the television screen. And surprisingly, this was before the concept of the Wii U or its gamepad even existed. One prototype involved attaching a small screen to a Wii Zapper, which inspired the use of gyroscope technology. Nintendo bigwig and creator of Mario, Shigeru Miyamoto, saw this experiment and loved the gyro idea so much that he added it to the 3DS as a last-minute feature. But to build on the idea of having a screen in your hands, this team came up with another prototype and would make this makeshift concept to convey the idea for the Wii U gamepad. A bit rough around the edges, but I see the vision. But with this prototype in mind, the team would now come up with the game concepts to match the idea. And initially they wanted a game where Nintendo franchises would interact with one another. Shimomura explained, quote, "That's when we started thinking about it with the phrase as, what if Nintendo made a theme park? We tried making something like a theme park poster with a bunch of Mii characters lined up under the catchphrase of, Nintendo Land is now open in your living room, and it came off nicely. From that moment, the idea of a Nintendo-themed amusement park took off. Each attraction was designed as a standalone experience first, with the right Nintendo franchise matched later. And the goal was to avoid making the attractions feel limited, giving them depth and replayability. Even Monita, the park's robotic guide, has a backstory, with Shimomura explaining, quote, "What was a hint to that character was how we're able to work with two audio output sources. We've never had anything structured like this before with two speakers on the television and Wii U gamepad in your hands. So I definitely wanted to take advantage of it. I wanted to make it so the characters help you navigate by speaking through that audio feature, and if one was the shape of a monitor, we could display a lot, and if it had 3 fingers, it could count to 3. So that's how Monita came about. As the game started to grow legs, the team focused on more depth for each attraction in the game. For example, The Legend of Zelda Battle Quest involved the developers of Ocarina of Time, contributing their expertise to make sure they were building a proper Zelda for Nintendoland. According to Yamashita, the document for that attraction alone was the size of a thick tome, with the team producing a lot of stages for each individual attraction to make sure there was challenging content for both casual and hardcore gamers alike. Despite all this, the team recognized that the idea of Nintendoland wouldn't be as easy to convey as something like Wii Sports, and the reaction at E3 wasn't surprising to them. But it was received very well by critics on release, scoring mostly 7 and 8s out of 10, and being praised for the party game aesthetic and its ability to show off the Wii U's capabilities. But as I continue my tour through these attractions, I'll share more behind the scenes tidbits for each specific one, the ones we know about at least. So with my little respite over, time to get back into the park to see what other adventures await.
I'd shower you with coconut cream pies.
Donkey Kong's Crash Course. This attraction is a gem, and a mashup of what seems like the minecart levels from Donkey Kong Country, one of those ball and maze games they used to have at the doctor's office for the kids, and the classic Donkey Kong arcade aesthetic reimagined on a chalkboard. So the goal here is pretty simple: get your tiny rolling cart to the Pauline drawing at the end of the board. But that's easier said than done. This little attraction might actually be more brutal than the original Donkey Kong. Tilting the gyroscope on the Wii U gamepad gives your little triangle cart momentum, but this thing is very fragile. Too fast or too high a drop, and it crumbles, sending you back to the last checkpoint. And the board is split into several areas, each filled with interactive platforms that require precision. You'll press buttons like L or R to raise ramps, spin the gamepad sticks to move pulleys, and even blow into the microphone to spin fans, all while trying to keep your hands steady so you don't accidentally send your cart careening off some ledge. Luckily, if your little triangle gets unstable and you see you're about to crash, you have time to hit the Y button to teleport back to the last checkpoint without losing any lives. It's a small but welcome mercy. So on my return to Nintendoland, this was the single player attraction I spent the most time in. Pauline must be saved, so it was time to lock the f in, and I'm not leaving Donkey Kong's Crash Course until she's free from his chalky clutches. Yes! I conquered this attraction once and for all. Yeah, so that's when I learned that not only are there 2 courses, but you gotta clear this one twice to unlock the second one, and there are more difficult versions of both of these courses. So at this point, I have to say Nintendoland might just be the most difficult Nintendo title on Wii U, hands down. So while I was attempting this section over and over again, I remembered an interview with the developers in the Iwata Asks feature for this game. Producer Katsuya Eguchi specifically recommended this attraction, saying, quote, "Depending on the skills and ideas of the player, the course design has been done in a way that you can take shortcuts and do speedruns," end quote. The developers clearly enjoyed designing this one though. It was apparently a favorite during development. Crowds of staff would gather around whoever was test playing to see if they could discover new shortcuts or beat speedrun records. So the Crash Course made me crash out and I stepped back into the Plaza. And by the way, if you're enjoying this journey back into Nintendoland as much as I am, rage and all, consider becoming a member of the channel. It's a great way to support me, and as a thank you, I'll give you a shout out at the end of future videos. So if you've been enjoying this content over the last few months, consider being a member. It helps tremendously. So then I moved on to the next attraction, Captain Falcon's Twister Race. Hell yeah. Time to show him our moves and hop into this recreation of the Blue Falcon. Aside from F-Zero 99, this is probably still the most recent action F-Zero fans have gotten. A little heartbreaking to think about. But if it's any consolation, I look forward to diving into the Captain Falcon lore at some point in time. So it's probably hard not to guess what this attraction's all about. Picture yourself behind the wheel of the blue Falcon, racing through a high-speed gauntlet of twists, turns, and bombs. In Captain Falcon's Twister Race, you'll be racing through a course of 12 areas, each with their own obstacles as you try to reach the checkpoint of each area in time. But for this race, you'll be strictly using the gamepad, holding it vertically to guide the blue Falcon through each twist and turn, while tilting the gamepad in the appropriate direction. It's possible to use the perspective of the TV screen to guide you, but I ended up just staring down at the gamepad the whole time. You'll be avoiding spikes, bombs, and even other vehicles, and I think the hardest part about clearing this attraction is avoiding these bombs. Hit one of these and your run is completely over, no second chances. But in the grand scheme of things, it's actually not too challenging and is one of the shorter attractions at the park. But if you complete the 12 areas in the course, eventually you'll unlock 12 extra areas, which boost the difficulty of the course in general. I mentioned before that the nintendoland team tried to strike a balance for both casual players and hardcore gamers, and this was the compromise. Each attraction has some kind of hard mode to it to add the extra challenge once you've cleared it. And I know someone in the comments is probably itching to prove me wrong. I'm standing by my claim. Nintendoland is the ultimate Wii U endurance test. Which brings me to our next attraction, Takamaru's Ninja Castle.
Who?
Yeah, if you're not familiar with Takamaru, you're not alone. I didn't know about this character until I first visited this attraction 12 years ago. For the uninitiated, the mysterious Murasame Castle is a 1986 Famicom game that never made it out of Japan until many years later. You play as Takamaru, a samurai warrior of the Shogun who goes on a secret mission to stop aliens. Hell yeah. At Nintendoland, I was given the honor of stepping into Takamaru's sandals with Monita handling me a stack of shuriken to chuck at ninja scum.
It is time for us to begin today's throwing star training. Well done.
Unfortunately, my tour took a sharp turn when Monita got kidnapped by these paper-fold villains.
Hey, let me go. Release me at once. Please say eat me.
Damn it. How am I supposed to finish this tour without Monita? So this attraction is all about showcasing the Wii U's gamepad touchscreen. You hold it upright to aim, and you slide your finger across the screen to throw these shuriken. The faster you swipe, the further and faster they fly. And the more enemies you take down, the higher your score. Obstacles will block your shots and enemies will swarm from all directions, and Monita, bless her circuits, will even suggest using the stylus if your fingers start to give out. You've got 50 stars at your disposal, and if you run out, you'll need to tilt the gamepad up to reload. But it's not just about spamming your stars. These ninjas come in various colors, each with unique attacks. Some stand around just waiting for you to hit them, some will be lobbing bombs at you. And then there's the ones that rush at you with their swords. When that happens, you'll need to swipe quickly to land a counterattack with your own blade. It's all about timing, and if you're not ready, it can be a bit tricky at times. But while the mechanics are pretty simple, there is one other catch to this gameplay. Some of these ninjas will drop scrolls, and when you have one on hand, you can draw a certain shape on the gamepad to transform your throwing stars into a more powerful weapon, like bombs. And if you draw a V shape, you have a move that will decimate entire groups. But as you get further into this attraction, it's sensory overload. I mean, look at this boss. This attraction sicks the Power Rangers on me. And they jump into this giant demon statue, and I hit almost every piece of this thing and had no clue how else to take it down until it got the best of me with its mouth cannon. Turns out you just have to keep aiming for the face and destroy it with good timing. But once the statue goes down, Princess Monita is saved, and she thanks you for your bravery.
My vocal synthesis prohibits me from expressing happiness through my voice, but I assure you, I am ecstatic.
Takamaru's Ninja Castle might not have the staying power of some of the other attractions, but it's a unique highlight of the park. Back in the plaza, I noticed the sun starting to dip lower in the sky, and I'm about halfway through all the attractions, but I needed some backup for a good deal of them. So while I had a break, I made a quick phone call to bring in a friend for the multiplayer experiences. They needed some time to get to the park though, so after catching up with Monita and pressing the button on this billboard statue one more time, because how could I not, I decided to head into the attraction it came from, Pikmin Adventure. While this game is recommended to be multiplayer, I could jump into this one on my own. Based on the popular Nintendo franchise Pikmin, I took the role as Captain Olimar, reliving his adventure to find the parts to his spaceship after he crash landed on a mysterious planet filled with these tiny, helpful plant-like creatures named Pikmin. Starting off in challenge mode, the attraction is broken into several different levels, much like Zelda Battle Quest. And as Olimar, I had a small squad of Pikmin at my disposal to help me fight through waves of enemies and reach my ship at the end of each stage. But this wasn't a peaceful stroll. Enter Dark Monita. No relation to my sweet park guide Monita, of course. Dark Monita is out for blood, spawning enemies from gachapon capsules at every turn, determined to stop me. Gameplay here feels reminiscent of the mainline Pikmin games, but with a twist. Joining me was a giant Pikmin NPC who would typically represent a friend in co-op mode, and my Pikmin squad could be tossed at enemies using the gamepad's touchscreen. The more nectar I collected across the stage, the stronger my Pikmin grew, starting as simple buds before blossoming into full flowers. With each level up, I gained more Pikmin to throw, and they packed a stronger punch. I also stumbled upon power-up items like the Hammer Seed, which gave my Pikmin a devastating smash attack, and the Whip Seed, which extended their range. But unlike in the core Pikmin games, I didn't have to worry about losing Pikmin permanently, thankfully. And if they fell in battle, they would respawn after a short wait. But during that downtime, I had to dodge enemy attacks and keep my footing. With only 3 hits allowed before a game over, staying on my toes was critical. But what stood out the most about Pikmin Adventure to me was how satisfying it felt to play. The touch controls were responsive, and chucking Pikmin at enemies had a tactile charm that made every throw rewarding. It's like Pikmin Light, stripped of the stress of resource management but still packed with action, giving it more of a, dare I say, Diablo type of feel? And there's plenty of content here too, 22 levels in total. Most of them are straightforward get to the goal type stages, but the attraction also includes time challenges where you defeat enemies to extend the clock and race to the finish before time runs out. Complete these stages under a certain time limit and without taking damage, and you'll earn a mastery ranking for that level. The last 6 levels are the advanced challenges, where a new mechanic is unlocked. You can switch between the color Pikmin, which leads to challenges of trying to exploit the weak points of enemies on the stage who take extra damage from a specific color. This is probably my favorite attraction at Nintendoland, and I personally wouldn't mind if there were a smaller Pikmin game or a specific game mode within Pikmin that expands on this formula a bit. But there's more. Pikmin Adventure also includes a versus mode, so grab some friends and you'll go head to head to collect candy pieces scattered across the stage. You can either defeat enemies for candy or attack the opposing team and steal it from them. I didn't get a chance to play this mode with a full set of players, but this simple attraction looks like it can get pretty cutthroat. So my final single rider attraction at this park is Balloon Trip Breeze, inspired by the NES classic Balloon Fight. Fun fact, Balloon Fight was made in 1984 as a collaboration between Nintendo and HAL Laboratory. At the time, a young Satoru Iwata, before he became CEO of Nintendo, was a programmer on that project. And together with producer Gunpei Yokoi of Nintendo, they made this thrilling title where players would float above ground with 2 balloons attached to their helmet, avoiding obstacles to make sure that they don't pop. Balloon Trip Breeze carries forward that same high-stakes charm. Here I took on the role of a balloon fighter, vulnerable and helplessly flapping in the wind, and tasked with collecting as many balloons as possible before landing safely on an island to progress to the next stage. This attraction makes full use of the gamepad's touchscreen. Using the stylus, I swipe gently to create gusts of wind, guiding myself through the treacherous skies, and with every course the difficulty ramps up in classic Nintendoland fashion. So I not only had to worry about this crazed chick throwing hands at me, there are flying spikes everywhere, this big fish that will hop out the water and eat you whole if you get too close to the bottom, and in later stages there are thunderstorms and high winds which force me to make more violent swipes to save myself from being swept away. And what I failed to mention before is that each attraction has its own type of achievements. They're called stamps. So for example, for Balloon Trip Breeze here, you'll have to accomplish objectives like defeating 30 of these insane birds or getting through the entire attraction without losing a single balloon. But I don't have time for that. My friend was calling me mid-attraction to let me know that they had arrived. Perfect timing too, because night had fallen over the park. But for the last part of my tour, it was time to dive into the competitive multiplayer attractions. And where better to start than with our good friend of the channel, Mario, and his attraction, Mario Chase. This attraction is literally a game of reverse tag, and I'm a little surprised this was the representation Mario got at Nintendoland. It's odd they didn't lean into their flagship mascot a little bit more here. But despite that, this game is a blast. It's a fully multiplayer experience where you'll be joined with up to 4 other players as you jump into maps inspired by the Mushroom Kingdom. One of these players is selected as Mario, and then the rest are Toads, and the objective is for at least one of the Toads to tackle Mario. It's that simple. But after explaining the rules to my friend, who by the way was way too confident about their chasing skills, we jumped into these maps, and of course, I took the role of Mario. There's a brief countdown where Mario can get the head start, and these maps are split into 4 colored zones, with Monita constantly screaming the zone where I was hiding out loud for everyone to hear. Monita, my supposed guide, immediately sold me out. Thankfully, as Mario, you have control over the gamepad, which displays an overhead map where you can keep tabs on all the other players hunting you down. But once my friend spotted me, all hell broke loose. It was a wild chase across the map with me scrambling to dodge tackles while they tried to cut me off. The first map is pretty straightforward, no gimmicks, just pure chaos. But the second map is covered in mud to slow down anyone who decides to run through it. So if you're Mario, I highly suggest not taking this route. And the last map has these really fun slides, but the catch is that they're a one-way trip. But if you use it right, it gives you a boost of speed that could catch Mario off guard. Halfway through each round, stars will spawn in the center of the map, allowing Mario to collect it and buy himself some time by becoming invincible. But if your friends decide to strategize, it's probably a good time to jump Mario while he's attempting to grab the star. What else can I really say about this attraction? It's really simple, but with big groups is a lot of fun. This was the attraction where I spent the most time with friends many years ago, and it did make me feel nostalgic to a time where we had more time on our hands. Funny enough, the Nintendoland team did show this particular game to Mario veterans Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka. They described Miyamoto's moves in the attraction as amateurish and ended up using his lone wolf playstyle to distract whomever was Mario and strategize efficiently. Outside communication was something considered during the design of this attraction, with Sakaguchi saying, quote, "You come up with all kinds of words to indicate the direction that Mario is fleeing, like clockwise and counterclockwise and outer circle and inner circle. We colored the landforms and purposely made a bowl shape in order to enable words like up and down. Well, none of that was really necessary during my experience, and after a few rounds of this madness, I failed as Mario, tackled 2 out of 3 times. But I didn't give in to my salt and decided not to send my friend home. We had to cram in 3 more attractions before they closed the park. But this is a better place than any to say if you have a Wii U sitting around and you're on the fence about Nintendoland, I'd recommend it just to play Mario Chase with friends. It's the easiest to explain, easiest to pick up, and can lead to some genuinely fun moments. I'm actually curious to know in the comments if anyone has any precious experiences with this attraction, or rather, Nintendoland as a whole. Let me know below. The next attraction was one I was really excited to revisit, Metroid Blast. And after spending the last month diving deep into Metroid lore, I was ready to hop into this one with a new perspective. Metroid Blast is one of the park's largest attractions alongside Pikmin Adventure and Zelda Battle Quest. This time I got to step into the role of galactic bounty hunter Samus Aran, tackling challenges from both the air and the ground. The attraction features 3 distinct gameplay modes: Assault Mission, Surface Air Combat, and Ground Battle. While my friend was in the restroom, I decided to try out the Assault Mission, where you can pilot Samus's gunship using the gamepad, or fight on foot in her Varia suit with a Wii Remote and nunchuck. Solo or with a friend, players will join forces to eliminate waves of enemies from the Metroid series like Gamers, Space Pirates, Kraid, and Ridley? How did you get to Nintendoland? The gunship controls take advantage of the gyroscope to aim, and the 2 joysticks to accurately maneuver as you use your lasers to hit the target's weak points. But if you're using the Wii Remote, it's a little bit more nuanced. I had to go into full Varia suit mode, using the morph ball to scale up platforms and the grapple beam to hop from area to area, while being mindful of my targets and making my shots count. I only had 3 hearts, and this mode can get overwhelming pretty fast, especially when using the Varia suit. But I have to talk about the Kraid boss. I just love how faithful they are to the source material while taking these huge liberties with certain things. Kraid is this exaggerated version of the boss from Super Metroid, and you have to hit him in his weak points, and then when his mouth is open, fire a super missile or powerbomb him. As I cleared each phase of the boss, I actually laughed at the absurdity of how tall he gets. It's a callback to Super Metroid, but instead, let's just have him keep growing in size. The final boss in Assault Mission is of course Ridley, a welcome part of the attraction, but they took it a step further with the final extra boss, where it's both Ridley and Kraid at the same time. And it's actually wild to me we haven't seen these 2 team up at the same time in any Metroid title yet. Sakamoto, make that happen. As a co-op experience, Assault Mission is pretty polished, and I'll say this. It's probably a better multiplayer Metroid experience than Metroid Prime Federation Force. I guess to some fans that's not saying much. But after Assault Mission, we dove into the versus modes. Surface Air Combat pits 1 player in the gunship up against 4 players on the ground. I took on my friend solo and highly underestimated how accurate the Wii Motion Plus was, and was promptly shot down. But in this mode, you can even customize health levels for each player to balance out the team dynamics, making this asymmetrical game mode very thrilling with friends. And where Metroid Blast thrives is having maps that are extremely vertical, pushing players to fight at various levels while the player in the gunship will be put to the test on carefully maneuvering. Then there's ground battle, where everyone suits up and blasts it out on foot. The thing is, when I first played Metroid Blast, it felt extremely familiar to me and I couldn't put my finger on why. Until I learned in the developer interview that this attraction was initially going to be a Star Fox themed attraction. Rest in peace, Star Fox. The gameplay itself feels very much like the multiplayer gameplay from Star Fox Assault for the GameCube. Yamashita said, quote, "There was a time where Metroid Blast was going to be a Star Fox title, but the prototype featured this vehicle that hovered around like a helicopter, and we figured that would never be a good match for an R-Wing. Which is odd to me because I swear the Landmasters had this exact function in Star Fox Assault. Future me, edit that in." But once we were tapped out on Metroid Blast, I was in the mood for something a bit more lighthearted. I experienced way too many thrills back to back. But my friend, however, was still on a victory high and wanted to keep the competitive streak alive. So we compromised and headed to Animal Crossing Sweet Day. Don't let the cheerful vibes here fool you, this one can get pretty intense. I entered the world of Animal Crossing, stepping into the role of 2 gatekeepers in my epic mission to stop my friend from gathering 15 candies into this stash. Armed with the gamepad, I used its 2 joysticks to independently control each gatekeeper, closing in to force my friend to drop candy while chipping away at their 3 precious hearts. As a gatekeeper, strategy is everything, but in this case, I had one keeper apply pressure while leading this thief to my other gatekeeper. Meanwhile, the candy bandits scrambled to gather as much candy as possible, stashing it in their helmet. And with each one collected, they become slower and slower, making them more vulnerable. Though if they need to gain a boost to speed, they have the option to lighten up the load by dropping some candy. But up to 5 players can jump into this attraction of cat and mouse, so the more players, the more stressful it gets for the gatekeepers. There are 2 maps here, and much like Mario Chase, the rules are simple, but the possibility is endless, as players start to adapt and strategize on both sides of the fence. While the aesthetic is very much Animal Crossing, there isn't much tie-in to the game here, and I think the developers admit this one was a bit of a stretch. Eguchi, the producer of this game, is actually the creator of Animal Crossing, and had to tell the directors to tone it down a bit, as they went a little too overboard with the creative liberties. Though they don't really mention in this interview exactly what they've gone overboard on it. But funny enough, the idea to make the heads bigger was implemented by a programmer, so it was clear during development how much candy that player had. And then they all thought it was funny and decided to leave it in. And my strategic gatekeeping skills netted me a strong victory against my friend, who got a little too greedy with the candy over here. We contemplated one more round, but it was getting pretty late and the park would be closing in about an hour. So there is one last attraction left to visit, and the most fitting for this dark night. Luigi's Ghost Mansion. This attraction, inspired by Luigi's Mansion, pits one player as an invisible ghost up against 4 hunters armed with flashlights. Naturally, I took on the role of the ghost because I remember this thing being overpowered. So here's the setup. The ghost moves unseen through a dark maze, while the hunters use their flashlights to track and stun it. Flashlight batteries are limited, and the hunters can only see the ghost when it dashes or it gets caught with its pants down in the lightning from outside. The ghost wins if he catches all of the humans, but these trackers can revive other trackers with their flashlight. It just takes a while the hunters use their flashlights to get the ghost's health down to 0. Players can also track the ghost by the vibrations from the Wii remote. The closer the ghost is, the more intense the vibration. So all I had to do was sneak up on my friend and grab them? Say less. I always loved how you can just walk off with your prey for a bit before dropping them. So ideally you would play this game with 4 other players cosplaying as Luigi, Mario, Waluigi, and Wario while you hunt each other down. But since it's just me and my friend, there are 3 Monitas patrolling and spitting their flashlights around, and they honestly got the best of me the whole time. It's especially hard escaping their lights for some reason. Batteries will spawn on the map to supercharge the player's flashlights to balance things out. The attraction has 5 unique maps, each with a different gimmick. And as the ghost, my favorite was the storage room, which has these knights in armor that shake around when players get close. This sets off the vibration in their controller, which gives the ghosts an opportunity to close the gap in the confusion. There's definitely ways to get more cunning no matter which side you're playing, and the developers once again considered this when designing the game. On this game's release, many players online were apparently discussing how much of an advantage the ghost had, but Yamashita would say in an interview that the advantage changes in a major way once more strategy and experience is thrown into the mix. During development, their playtesters said that the ghost was way too strong, but then when the devs started joining in games with them, Suddenly, the ghost couldn't win at all. During my play session, there were these moments where I thought I'd outsmarted my friend, but then bam! Monita's flashlight swung right at me. And I really took it from both sides here.
Hey, yo!
But one thing I have to give major props to is the ambiance. The sound effects and soundtrack absolutely nailed the Luigi's Mansion vibe. Ryo Nagamatsu and his team composed over 200 tracks for Nintendoland. And they're not just nostalgic, they're downright incredible. Every remix, every jingle just perfectly captures the magic of the franchises that they represent. And if there's one thing you take away from this video, don't sleep on this soundtrack. So after a few more rounds at the mansion, I had to say goodnight to my friend. So at that point, it was just me in the park with little time left. After revisiting all these attractions, I realized there was still one last thing I hadn't done. Throughout my journey, for every attraction I completed, I was rewarded a star, and I think I owed it to Monita to collect them all. So with the park's closing hour approaching, I made it my mission to give Nintendoland the perfect send-off. At last, I'd done it. Every challenge was completed, and Monita was there to congratulate me. After spending the entire day in this park, I felt something strange. Maybe it was nostalgia, maybe it was Stockholm Syndrome, but I didn't want to leave. And to build on that feeling, Monita agreed to close the park early to hold a special celebration for me, the champion of all Nintendoland.
I hope you're ready to party. Here we go.
And by party, she meant the credits, while this fleet of Monitas dance around me in a circle, blocking my escape. But while the credits roll before the final finale, I wanted to take a moment to thank the very first members of the channel, Spoobini and Kenny Lauderdale. You guys are the pioneers, and I couldn't do this without you. The first of millions of members, no doubt. But seriously, thanks for your dedication and support of the channel. But with the credits rolling to a close, Monita had one last gift for me, the fireworks from that long ago E3 presentation. But this time, they hit a bit different. It was the perfect way to end my time at the park, but unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and it was time for me to go home. It's very unlikely Nintendo will ever open the gates to this park again, so sadly I think this is goodbye for now. But I'm happy I could share this charming, forgotten park with all of you, and who knows, maybe one day Monita will make a return and breathe life into a new park somewhere in the future.
I'll always be eagerly anticipating your return. Thank you very much.